Require students to wear uniforms? Suppose you were stopped on the side of the road by a police officer and he was wearing jeans with holes in them and they were sagging down to his knees. Would this be disturbing for any other reason than it being non-traditional? I believe that clothing is a way of reinforcing mindset. A policeman in his uniform is reminded of his responsibility to protect life and property. Students in uniforms are similarly reminded of their role as a student. School uniforms are certainly not the only factor to consider when judging a student's overall academic performance. But even so, in Japan, Taiwan, and Hong Kong, the students scored best on international tests, and all three of these states required their students to wear uniforms. It seems evident that a uniform has a positive contribution to fostering a serious attitude toward education. An impressive example of a school uniform policy experiment in the United States was in California in 1994. A year after the uniform policy was implemented, the fights and muggings at school decreased 50%. Sexual offenses were reduced by 74%. Middle school attendance reached almost 95%. Research shows a correlation between appropriate dress and academic performance. As a principal in Maryland said, students will not be distracted with who is wearing what brand of jeans, shirts, or pants. Students can focus on learning, which is why they are there. Safety is a huge concern in our society. Bullying has created an enormous problem for public schools. School uniforms can diminish the amount of bullying within schools by removing the opportunity to judge someone by their appearance. Everyone is dressed the same, so the judgment is not prevalent. By wearing uniforms, the low-income and high-income students look the same. From the California school statistics stated earlier, 89% of the students involved in bullying are low-income. Tension and temptation to bully will be reduced dramatically by eliminating this barrier between social classes. Wearing school uniforms also causes a reduction in gang activity. Clothing is significant to gang culture, and our public schools are the #1 place for gang recruitment. Imagine a U.S. Army recruiter out of uniform trying to recruit new soldiers. The success rate goes down. The same applies for gang recruitment. School uniforms allow more students to be happier and enjoy school. Uniforms establish the kind of atmosphere that allows students to see the positives of education. Many students who wear uniforms say they feel more school pride. Students feel more connected to their school and classmates when they're wearing school colors. If there's a sense of community and compatibility among the students, then the use of foul language, gang behavior, and crimes like vandalism are generally reduced. Self-confidence in students grows by wearing school uniforms because the students know that they are a part of something bigger. Some say that school uniforms hinders the students to be an individual. It's also been said that uniforms infringe on the student's freedom. However, uniforms do not threaten a student's individual freedom because there are many other things that make you, you, besides your clothing. People would be noticed for who they are as individuals rather than for what they are wearing. Japheth Sanchez, a research assistant professor, and George Gus Hill, associate professor, designed a 49-question survey to which approximately 1,350 students responded during the school's first year of implementing a uniform policy. The students were 7th and 8th grade students at Vaughn and Pine Middle Schools in Reno and Sparks Middle School in Sparks, Nevada. Students' top-rated statements with responses of agree and strongly agree were, I still have my identity when I wear a uniform, 54%. My family likes that I wear a uniform to school, 53%. I think uniforms save money on clothes, 50%. I worry less about how others look, 42%. And there is less gang activity at school, 41%. When I was in middle school, I felt like people were being judged by what they wore. If you didn't have the brand name clothing that was really popular, the kind of jeans that everybody was wearing, I felt like people looked down on me. It was an obsession for me to have brand name clothing. I wanted all the brand name clothing so bad, but my parents couldn't afford to buy them for me, and I didn't have the money to buy them for myself. And I think it kept me from concentrating on my studies. I don't think I was as good of a student because I was so focused on what I was going to be wearing the next day, and if I had the right brand name of something to wear, and if it was going to look just right. I think uniforms in schools would have made a huge difference when I was in school. And now I have a daughter that's 14 and she's in middle school. And although she doesn't care that much about brand name clothing, there's a lot of kids at school that do, and they judge each other because of what they're wearing. And I just think it really makes sense to wear uniforms. It's the right thing to do. As stated above, uniforms can improve a student's academic performance as well as help them concentrate more on their studies and less on who is wearing what. It's important to feel safe and secure when you're getting an education. Wearing school uniforms does not solve all of the problems in schools, but from the above studies, it shows a significant improvement. If you agree that students should be required to wear uniforms in schools, then I would encourage you to petition your school board and speak to your school principal about it. And if you do have a uniform policy in your child's school, then I would strongly encourage you to support it. And if you don't live in an area that requires school uniforms, you could consider moving into an area that does. And I hope that you would speak out about this and make it known that it's important for schools, for these students to wear uniforms. Thanks.